Defending Farmers Against the Agenda 2030 Land Steal. That is the title of an article that appears in the December 12 issue of the New American Magazine. But what land steal are we talking about? How endangered are farmers today? Let's take a look. This is Beyond the Cover with your host, Gary Benoit, and today we have with us on the program Rebecca Terrell, who is the author of Defending Farmers Against the Agenda 2030 Land Steal. Rebecca, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Gary. It's good to be here.
Well, thanks, Rebecca. Rebecca, what land steal are we talking about, and what does this have to do with Agenda 2030? And while you're at it, what is Agenda 2030?
Well, that's a very good question, and it's something that we've been, the John Birch Society has been working hard throughout the decades to warn people about what's going on, and now we're seeing it in practice. The John Birch Society is a very unique organization, as you know, Gary. We're really the only organization on earth trying to warn people about this worldwide conspiracy for global government through the United Nations and things like Agenda 2030. Agenda 2030 is basically the updated version of Agenda 21, which was a document that was created in 1992 at the Rio Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. But at the very first Conference of the Parties, the Earth Summit, we've just recently had the 27th one over in Egypt. Alex Newman and our New American team covered that for us. But this is a program where they spell it out in very plain terms. They intend to institute tyrannical control over every aspect of our lives. And Agenda 2030, Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030 encompass everything: economics, technology, communications, transportation, every aspect of your life, education, even religion, will come under the purview of this global government that they have planned. So part of the land steal, what I call the land steal, they actually say in the UN documents that private property ownership is injurious to individuals because it takes away use of the land for everyone. It's completely inverted, completely irrational argument, but of course they use their narrative verbiage to make it sound like they're doing favors for the underprivileged. So what we're talking about here about defending farmers is, again, Birchers are out on boots on the ground, warning farmers about the carbon capture pipelines that are being planned all across the Corn Belt of the United States of America. These companies are private companies that are being subsidized heavily by the United States government, by Joe Biden's last year, his $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill included $12 billion for these carbon capture technologies, and $2.1 billion of that is intended to fund low interest loans for this carbon dioxide pipeline expansion. These are loans to private companies that intend to network these pipelines all across our most valuable farmland. And as we know, we've got a lot of food insecurity right now. The government's coming at farmers from a lot of different directions, from everything from even threatening to tax them for their cow flatulence because of, all in the name of saving Mother Earth. And farmers are finding it more and more difficult to get fertilizer. We're seeing a setup for a coming contrived famine, food crisis. And this CO2 pipeline expansion is part of that as well.
Now, as you mentioned, Rebecca, the John Birch Society has been exposing this conspiracy for global control for a long time, and specifically with regard to Agenda 2030, and the precursor to that was Agenda 21. That goes all the way back to 1992, and the John Birch Society has been fighting that from 92 to the present. But I would venture to say that not long ago, if you were to go to American farmers And if you were to point out that this conspiracy exists and that it actually threatened their livelihoods, threatened their farms, many of them would think you're crazy. Now, I know for the research that you did for this article in the December 12 issue of the New American, Defending Farmers Against the Agenda 2030 Land Steal, you've talked to a number of farmers. In fact, you talked to quite a few farmers in the Corn Belt. What are these farmers saying today?
Well, they're waking up. A lot of them are now thanking the John Birch Society for the work that we're doing there, spelling out this is exactly what's happening, because a lot of people are confused. They don't understand why they're being threatened with eminent domain, the use of eminent domain for a private enterprise, for a private profit-making enterprise. Supposedly, the narrative is that this benefits us all because it reduces carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and saves Mother Earth from eco-catastrophe. Even environmentalists are against this technology, this carbon capture technology. They have proven with actual scientific studies that these carbon capture technologies are net CO2 additive. They are so energy intensive. It is so difficult to capture carbon coming out of these ethanol factories across the Midwest that produce this carbon. It is so very difficult to do that you're actually adding carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. So we know just by that point alone that the goal here isn't to reduce carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. The goal is to capture land. Now, a lot of people will think, okay, all you have to do is lay the pipeline and then the farmer can use the land again. That's not the case. They are instituting 100-foot permanent easements in this area around the pipeline where the pipeline's being put in. You can no longer use the land. A farmer can no longer use his land for farming. And people also don't understand the intricate network that's laid out underneath a lot of our Midwest farms. It's called tiling, tile plow. It's actually a very ancient type of a system of irrigation that was used to control. And what it does is it helps to, the low-lying areas of fields that get flooded, it drains those and uses that drainage to irrigate the higher levels of the fields. It's amazing the amount of crop yield how crop yield goes up once tiling is put in. If you tear up that tiling, you're not just messing it up for that one field, you're messing it up for all the tiling downstream from that as well. And so there's a lot. And the other aspect of this, the other side of the coin of this is if the government can come in and take your land under the auspices of eminent domain for whatever reason, then they can do that to any of us. If
Sure.
they can do that with just these farmers, they can do that to any of us. They're setting a precedent here where all public property is subject to eminent domain for whatever
Yeah.
thought whatever they think up next.
And of course, the government is not taking it to make it government land as such. And that in itself would be a bad thing. But they're really intervening on behalf of private companies that would be building and maintaining these carbon capture pipelines. But you made the point earlier, Rebecca, that this carbon capture program, which is based on the ludicrous assumption that CO2 is a pollutant, that this program actually causes more carbon dioxide to be released into the atmosphere than otherwise would be the case if you did not have this carbon capture program to begin with. And so, as you point out, it's obvious there's got to be more to it than meets the eye. And you've talked to some farmers, and you talked to some very well-informed farmers who have been studying this issue and have gotten involved in the freedom movement to protect their farms and the farms of their neighbors. But what do these farmers have to say? How aware have they become? And in fact, I think some of them have mentioned that their fellow farmers are also waking up as a result of the policies that are being imposed upon them.
There are, well, and I've heard from, yes, I have heard from a lot of farmers. First of all, they all of them know that the argument that carbon dioxide is somehow a pollutant is completely ludicrous. Farmers know better than anybody what helps their crops grow,
Right.
and one of those things, of course, and we all learn that in elementary school and biology classes, that carbon dioxide is of plant food, one of the most vital plant foods, and what we get when we see this historically when carbon dioxide, atmospheric carbon dioxide levels rise, the planet Earth there's experiences a greening period, and when atmospheric carbon dioxide declines, then you see the opposite effect. So, I mean, that right there, a lot of the farmers will point out when we have greenhouses, we pipe carbon dioxide in for the purpose of increasing plant yield. So they know, all the farmers know that the carbon dioxide argument is, like I said, absolutely ludicrous. I will say that a lot of the farmers, though, have been discouraged because some of their neighbors whose property isn't immediately directly affected by the land grab of these carbon capture pipelines, some of them are turning a blind eye, which is rather discouraging. One of the farmers pointed out to me that, you know, they had they themselves had that sort of attitude until it started affecting them personally, and they see now the danger of doing that, that we're kinda all in this together, so to
Right.
speak, and we need to everybody in the country needs to be concerned about this because it affects one of our basic rights, and that is the right to private property, the
I
right
can
to
see
own
where that
property.
would be discouraging, where a farmer whose land is not directly affected would say, well, it doesn't affect me, therefore I'm not going to become involved.
Mhm.
But, uh, but there's also an encouraging element. Part of it is that there are other farmers who are getting involved, but part of it too, Rebecca, is what you had to say earlier about members of the John Birch Society. Now, of course, there are members of the John Birch Society who are farmers, but there are many members of the John Birch Society who are not farmers.
Right.
And the JBS members who are not farmers, as well as those who are, have really jumped into this particular issue in order to help these farmers who are now directly under assault. And of course, that's a very encouraging part of the story.
It is. It absolutely is. In fact, Tom DeWeese, who is on the board for the John Birch Society,
Hmm.
has been touring the Midwest to warn the farmers about that. Tammy Cobsa is another Birch member who is there, who lives there in Iowa, and is fighting tooth and nail, against the eminent domain for these carbon capture pipelines. Another thing I wanted to point out too is if the government were so concerned about the safety of all of us, which of course is supposedly the underpinning of saving Mother Earth, um, we should all be against these pipelines because when you condense carbon dioxide into its liquid form, which is
Hmm.
what is flowing through these pipelines, it does become toxic. It becomes a very dangerous, not just a pollutant, but it can kill. We know this from there was a pipeline that burst during flooding in 2020 near Satartia, Mississippi. If it had, authorities say that if that leak had happened at night when everyone was asleep, the entire town would have probably been wiped out. That as it was, people immediately once there was this leak, the carbon dioxide, when it hits the air, it turns right back into a gas. But now it is very condensed, and it's a heavy, thick cloud that sticks close to the ground, and the winds
Hmm.
push this cloud into the town. People started collapsing. They couldn't. They tried to escape by jumping in their cars and getting away. They couldn't because the car needs oxygen to run, and the
Right.
carbon dioxide displaced that oxygen. And then to add insult to injury, when they were fixing this leak after they'd contained it, when they were fixing this leak, that a few months later, exactly the same thing occurred. There was another accident, another leak. The entire town had to be evacuated, and now the residents of that town are living with residual problems that none of them had experienced before. So this is something, again, it seems like it's a very regionalized problem. It isn't. This affects every single one of us. It affects us from the aspect of our property rights. It also affects us because of the coming planned food famine that they have for us.
Right. which is something, of course, the New American Magazine has covered repeatedly. And of course, you've reported that farmers are becoming more aware that this carbon capture pipeline program that they're fighting is just one facet, it's just one part of a larger scheme to not just grab the land, but to impose world government, and in fact impose tyrannical world government. Rebecca, what do you recommend for people finding out for the first time about this conspiracy? What can they do? What should they do?
Well, I, of course, read the New American because we are covering this. We have a lot of information about it. I have interviewed a lot of farmers on here. Others have as well. We have our issue of the New American recently that we've published about the war on farmers. So that's the most important thing. To educate yourself. Also, get in touch with your local chapter of the John Birch Society, because the John Birch Society has a national agenda to be implemented at the local level. It's not something that you don't have to be a great, big, fantastic, wonderful person. You can just be your ordinary self at the local level and implement these. We've already figured out what needs to be done. We've already figured out the solutions. These are all things that need to be implemented at the local level. And we know that the other side knows this too, because all of the Agenda 2030 items are designed as well to be implemented at the local level, because that's the way they know that's the way that they're going to have to come in to infiltrate the United States and take us over and make us part of the one world government that they've planned. So we can combat that at the local level. It's very doable. The John Birch Society has the answers. So jbs.org is a real simple URL to remember. Look us up, and also follow us at thenewamerican.com. We'll be following this very closely and sending more news items your way.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. And in the description for this video, we will include a link to your article, as well as a link to jbs.org.
Thank you, Gary.